So, in today's video, in order to talk about why it's sometimes hard to let other people know that normalizing autistic children isn't a good thing, we're going to look a little bit more deeply into the psychology of belonging. But don't worry, we're not going to talk about really tough academic terms or anything like that. We're just going to look a little bit at brain science from, normal everyday perspective. I know you've been there before. You're in a grocery store and your child is happy, so they're jumping up and down incessantly, and you're used to it. Maybe they're flapping their hands a little bit, but they're jumping a little too close to somebody and they get a little annoyed. Maybe the school calls and they want to have an IEP meeting again because they keep running for the door and trying to elope. They don't know what to do, so they want to talk about it. Maybe your therapist wants to talk again about eye contact, and you're sitting at home thinking, do we really need to change the way my child behaves this much? Am I doing the wrong thing by trying to make my kid look and act more typical? And you're not alone. I sit in IEP meetings as an advocate, and I hear parents asking this question out loud all the time. And I work with parents that I coach and guide, and they ask me this question all the time. But let's say, for the sake of today's video, for today, we're going to talk about it as though the answer to that question is a flat no. You do not need to change your kid. Your kid needs your love, your support, your protection. And so in today's video, we're going to talk about a few reasons why it's so hard to talk to other people about why your kid doesn't need to change. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Wendy. I'm a developmental psychologist and parent to a severely autistic 14-year-old boy. And this is parenting through autism spectrum disorder, or parenting through ASD. Let's dive into it. Okay, so you and I know this. You know that we live in a world that worships sameness. We probably knew this before having autistic or special needs kids, but we feel it more than ever now. We have these beautiful, amazing, glorious kids, but everywhere we go, somebody wants to fit them into this mold that isn't them. And we see therapists, doctors, educators, friends and family trying to make them into something they're not. And not only is it harmful, like actually painful to their nervous systems, but it's erasure. And a little part of us sees that erasure and just shrivels up with them. So we struggle with this idea of normalization. And we tell ourselves, we're going to be neuroaffirming. We're going to keep our kids safe. And we're going to create a world for them where we let them be who they are. But we find ourselves fighting a battle to make that happen. And the truth is, there's some really good reasons why. And I want to talk about those today. Not because I want to discourage you or us from fighting that battle, but because I want us to know what we're up against so that we know how to tactically create the world our kids need. So here's the thing. There are deep psychologically rooted reasons why everyone around us, and even us at times, try to normalize our kids. There is a psychology of belonging, both social psychology, evolutionary psychology, and actually a lot of other areas have done a lot of research on this. There are reasons why sameness is preferred. And yeah, if you were ever a teenager, you probably fought against some of this sameness. Maybe not. Some teenagers were pretty well adapted and fit right in, but some of us rebelled. But other than that, most of us, for a good part of our lives, had this intuition that fitting in was a good thing. And as parents, we kind of understand that for our kids too. We have that same intuition. This is why we know that when we belong to groups, evolutionarily speaking, there's protection in belonging to groups. There's safety in numbers. If you've ever heard that saying, it's what we call a heuristic. It's kind of a shortcut to thinking. We know intuitively that safety in numbers means there's more protection when you belong to a group. When you are more like a group, that group is likely to take you in. That's where sameness comes in. When a group sees that you're like them, they accept you. And when they accept you, they'll protect you. And when you're protected, you're safe, right? And so for our autistic kids, they're different. They're less likely to be taken in by a group, which means they're less likely to be protected by a group, which means they're less likely to be safe. So, evolutionarily, if they were to be rejected, they would be more vulnerable. And that is all well researched. There's data to show that. And in our brain, there are actually things that happen along rejection and that sort of protection and safety. So there are pain centers when you're rejected from a group that are activated in your brain. Just like when you feel physical pain, those same pain centers in your brain turn on when you feel rejection. So we actually feel that in our brain. We know that that happens. There are all kinds of other things like anxiety. When you are excluded from a group, there is anxiety that actually happens physically in your body. So, as a parent, that happens also. When you see that your kids are not accepted, you feel that same anxiety. Um, so, you try to make your kids fit in. You do all kinds of things to help close the gap on any differences so that your kids are accepted and you reduce your own anxiety and reduce your kids' anxiety. There's all kinds of research around these things. Um, and all of these things are meant to increase inclusion, to reduce anxiety, to reduce physical pain, to reduce rejection, and to increase safety and make sure that you increase protection. So there's all kinds of ways that we psychologically need to belong to a group socially. So it's not just this sort of superficial, let's make sure that people are normal. There's also research around collectivist cultures. And this is a little, I don't want to go on a tangent, but there's research where we talk about collectivist and individualist cultures. And we tend to think of like American and Western cultures as being individualistic, which means that they value the individual more than they value the group. Collectivist cultures value groups more than they value individuals. At a very, very short sort of description, there's a lot more to it than that. But in collectivist cultures, there tends to be an idea that people who are rejected or who aren't accepted by the group think of them as having issues with morality or being deviant. So then they have even less of a chance of being accepted into the group. They're seen as being evil almost. So that's even a bigger problem in collectivist cultures and even to some extent in individualistic cultures. So not being accepted into a group or being different from the group kind of marked you as a deviant or evil person. So there was even more reason for people to around you, people who loved you, to make you appear normal so that you would be accepted into a group somehow. Okay, so all of that said, there are good reasons. There are well-meaning reasons for people around autistic children or neurodivergent special needs children to want them to be accepted, to want them to be seen as the same as other neurotypical children, and therefore to do things to normalize their behaviors. There are reasons that a lot of therapies have been focused on normalizing autistic behaviors. And it's not that people are cruel, but there are actual psychological, deep in the brain reasons that we have created therapies in that way without even, I think, realizing it in a lot of ways. I think a lot of times we think of it as we're helping children. And in some ways, we are helping children because if what we're thinking of is children will be protected and they will be safe because they're accepted into the group and the group will protect them, it kind of does help children in that way. But what happens is children lose authenticity if we are trying to force children to be someone they're not. On a very basic level, they're losing authenticity. But beyond that, autistic children have been shown to feel actual pain, like nervous system based pain, when we're forcing them to behave in ways that are not natural to their bodies. And there are mild forms of autism where children who can communicate and express themselves better and who can self reflect are able to tell us how they mask and behave in ways that are not normal for them, to share how they've had to behave and pretend to be someone they're not in order to meet the needs of therapists and friends and family. And that increases things like drug abuse and substance abuse overall, depression, anxiety, and things like that. So we're able to see the harm it does to neurodivergent, autistic, and other special needs kids when we try to force normalization onto children and individuals in this way. So, the good thing is that there are a lot of other areas of work that have fought against normalization. There are disability groups, of areas of physical disability who have fought against this type of normalization. There are deaf advocacy groups. There are trauma-based, trauma-informed areas of work. And I'm going to talk about those in the next video. And in that video, we'll talk about tactics that we can borrow that help us in this anti-normalization effort work against these deeply rooted, psychologically based tendencies to try to work towards sameness so that we can actually create environments and work against our own psychologically rooted tendencies to help our kids be who they are and to combat some of the more difficult outcomes if we keep trying to normalize our kids. Okay, that's all for now. So if you like this kind of discussion, please follow along by subscribing to the channel. You can also like this video. We'll see you again soon.